moderator for this conversation, Mayor Frank Scott Jr., Mayor of Little Rock, Arkansas, and President of the African American Mayors Association.
Good afternoon. Well, I guess it's still morning, right? It's still morning. I want to take this opportunity to really just share our appreciation to everyone who's here today. This is a special moment for me, and I'll share that as we continue to bring everyone here to the table. But first, I want to bring Jamez Staples to the table, local entrepreneur, and definitely in the energy space and all the great things that he's doing. And then also another great stalwart within the Target Reach space, and we'll talk a little bit about Target Reach here today, is Ms. Hernandez. Would she please come? Well, clearly, we're here to discuss diversity, equity, and inclusion. Before we really go into the nuts and bolts about DEI, many do not know, while I am the mayor of Arkansas State Capital City, Little Rock, Arkansas, and the president of African American Mayors Association, my first job out of college, it was at T551. For those in the room who do not know what that means, it was basically T551. It was out of Maumelle, Arkansas, which is a suburb of Little Rock, and so it was a Target distribution center. And so I was a part of the Target network and worked not only as a team leader right out of college and ultimately becoming a group leader, which is basically management within the Target infrastructure. And I can tell you that I learned so much from Target. The close to 2 years that I was there, had the opportunity to go to headquarters in Minneapolis, and much of my work when it comes to leadership was really girded in the Target culture. One of the things that I still remember vividly are the 4 E's of excellence, and so I utilize that today. If you talk to some of my team members, that goes, each year we have a leadership retreat, and we focus on those 4 E's, and of course the other things that we're working on within our sphere. Particularly this year, we're focusing a lot on transformation and stewardship, and so we talk about, the E's of excellence, which include energy is a close one, and then excellence, but also execution, and what we can do to be effective and efficient. And so I won't bore you because you all didn't sign up to go work for Target, but that's a great career. I want to make sure they didn't tell me to tell you that. You can grow up and become mayor one day. So I want to get to the story now and just kind of allow Jamez and Ms. Hernandez to kind of introduce themselves. But when we're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, help us understand why it matters, not only from a Target perspective, and we're very excited about what Target's been doing with Target Reach, and of course we'll talk about what Target Reach is, but we as mayors, we are focused. If you've seen this new wave of mayors over the last several years, you take Mayor Brown of Buffalo, New York, he has a chief diversity officer, and you're seeing many mayors have either chief diversity officers or chief equity officers. And so in Arkansas, we were able to create first ever, and now we have other cities that are following us in Arkansas, as the Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, with chief equity officers to ensure that there's equity across all business lines within the city of Little Rock, but not only on the business side of things with hiring and ensuring that equity is involved in every decision, but also because of procurement, ensuring that our dollars reflect the communities that we serve. And so, Ms. Hernandez, will you kind of give us a brief rundown?
I sure will. Good morning, everyone, or afternoon. Thank you for
It's
the
afternoon
invitation.
somewhere.
It's afternoon somewhere. It's still morning in Minnesota, and it's morning in Phoenix, my hometown. So thank you for joining us. So good to be here. I have a similar Target story as you do. I remember the E's of excellence because that was our framework when I got out of college as well. So I know we're going to talk about equity, but I do think it's important to maybe share. Well, nope, we'll just share. We're good. We're family up here. Share a little bit about beginnings in community, because I know that's what all of you in this room are here to do. So in my 22 years at Target, I started in stores, very similar to you, Mayor, on the front lines in our stores environment in Phoenix, Arizona, and did a number of different frontline jobs. And then moved to Minneapolis, like many folks do, got a bevy of experiences. And one of those was I was able to be in the forefront of the work in diversity, equity, inclusion when Target was building that function 17 years ago. I think that's important to note as different organizations, different cities, different mayors in the room stand that up, that it is a journey of work that you have to move through incrementally, space by space by space. So I'm really looking forward to digging into the equity conversation and the workforce conversation. In the chair that I hold, I lead diversity, equity, and inclusion, and our talent, learning, and development and succession functions, which are a beautiful marrying of the work, the people, and the processes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Jamez, how about you share your relationship with Target?
Well, the relationship with Target is fairly new, but I'm very appreciative for it. I'll tell you that we are actually, as a developer of solar projects, we are working on Target projects going forward. And so we're excited about that opportunity, because what it does is it creates a pathway for the people that we're focused on getting trained to actually have a project to really work on.
So when we're talking about the standpoint of, I know you say you're working with Target, and that's a big deal. Because we got to continue to figure out how we have more minorities that are part of the procurement and supply diversity pipeline. Are there ways that throughout this process, what kind of sticks out from a Target standpoint? Because I know you've been in business for quite some time, and you probably, if you've been in business quite some time, there's some good days, there's some bad days, and as my mom would say, there's some showing of ugly days. So clearly, you must have had some good days with Target to be here, because they definitely want you to highlight what's going on. But I know you can also kind of talk through not only how Target has been elevated, but also for those in the room who are in other rooms that can be helpful to their C-suite professionals in ensuring that there's more DEI within their own companies.
What I would say about
And I'm going a bit off script, so just understand that, all right?
That's the way I roll. So
All right,
go.
okay.
well, I appreciate that. So the relationship with Target, like I said, is organically developed by the process of us actually bidding on projects, right? And so we were competitive through the RFP process. And so Target, through their DEI initiatives, acknowledging, one, I want to acknowledge that the headquarters is in Minnesota, and I'm in Minnesota, the home of George Floyd, right? And so one of the things that we focused on as a result of that, and I appreciate that, is that they reached out to additional vendors that they hadn't traditionally worked with. And so that was a big deal, because we're not a big company like Target. We're a smaller company. And our goal is to grow, because our objectives are to make sure that we're creating the pathways of opportunity for the folks that haven't traditionally been engaged in the clean energy sector. Clean energy is an emerging sector that is like getting ready to take the world by force, that no one really understands the significance of it. Climate change is a global phenomenon, and everybody's talking about it, but no one really knows how to really address it. And so with the workforce issues that we see going forward, this is a huge opportunity. This is as big as the Industrial Revolution back in the early 19th century. And so with Target working with a firm such as mine, it's such a great opportunity, because it creates pathways of opportunity, as I said before, where young people existing will be able to work in this space.
Well, Jamez, one of the things I want to share, it's not often that you see a number of black men, black women in the energy space. And so that's something that needs to be lauded and something that needs to be expanded. And the reason why I bring that up is because we have to understand that climate change is real, and that as we focus on educational violence, as we focus on different things, there's also what I call environmental injustice. And so much of the environmental injustice, we have to have more education. We have to expand the prowess of more folks like you being in clean energy, renewable energy, understanding why we need to have a carbon footprint as we move forward. And that plays a role in, when people are talking about ESG, this is ESG at its best at this point in time. And so it's just great to see you and the work that you're doing. But what we heard was for those in the room that are representing companies, that Target has been intentional. You know, if there's no intentionality, there's no results. And so, Carrie, if you kind of walk through the process of one, before you get results, you got to have a playbook to execute.
That's right. That's why I start with 17 years. So we're actually about to hit year 18 of building a diversity, at the time, diversity and inclusion. You can't have D&I without the equity in between. And it is a multi-year journey. And I would say at Target, it kind of spanned a time capsule of, 5 different chapters. So the first was really creating the office, right? Like, okay, in 2004, 2005, we're looking at the dynamics of the workforce and what's happening in the dynamics in the country compared to the workforce. Okay, we are going to be in a majority, minority populated country at this point in time, 2030, 2040, depending on, what the census data shares. And so are we going to make sure that our workforce is reflective of our guests? So that was really chapter 1, establishing this work. Chapter 2 was about building a strategy. And so I'm a data person, right? Math is fun in my brain. And so you cannot get results. There's mayors in this room, partners in this room. You have to have data. You have to be able to understand what insights are you working towards, or pressures that are working against you to be able to drive results. So that was really the stand-up of the strategy. Chapter 3 was thinking about how we were going to measure the data and build external and internal partnerships. And chapter 4 was setting goals. So that's really where we've experienced the acceleration of that work over the last 7 years. We really goal ourselves on inclusive team member experiences. So in your words, the ease of excellence. In our words, how we create a culture where everyone feels a sense of belonging. And that belonging has to include representing in every part of our company racial, ethnicity, gender, diversity, different languages, different abilities. How do we measure that? How do we think about communities where we drive real societal impact, which is many of the spaces that all of you sit in? And how do we create partnerships in service to the business? And that is a perfect example of where Jamez comes in. He has a business proposition that actually is going to create workforce opportunities for those that get in the space, and provide an environment that's cleaner and safer for everyone. And what we know in this work, those of us that do the work in equity and inclusion, and really information, is at the bottom of every system are going to be people of color for numerous reasons, right? It could be economic. We certainly know that it's environmental, based on the systemic challenges that we've had in this country over, hundreds of years. But there's also a lack of knowledge. I know we have pastors in the room. Get wisdom, get knowledge, get understanding. There's a lack of knowledge around these processes, around what is clean energy, how do we define it? So when we really sat into our current chapter of this work, which is our Racial Equity Action and Change team, it was about how are we impacting the community where we have the largest opportunities in this country, and that's the Black community, the Black team member experience, the Black person that lives in the United States. So how do we broker those relationships with entrepreneurs, like the one sitting to my right, partnerships with Bridgeforth Farm. In the room earlier, they were talking about how we have to make sure that we're giving and breathing into our Black farmers. How do we then educate and inform our teams inside of Target that understand how to go and procure and connect and meet different businesses that need access to capital? They've got the idea, they've got the ingenuity, they've got the plan. They just need one of those roads Senator Warnock was talking about, being paid from one place to the other.
Well, here we've talked a lot about equity, and clearly that's the reason why we're here as we have this conversation. But I think we're going to have talk about equity, and we referenced George Floyd. But I also think we have to put in the mindset justice and accountability. And I say those two words of justice and accountability from the standpoint of understanding that there were a lot of companies in the wake of George Floyd who said, hey, we're going to put all this money towards equity. We're going to get our act together. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. I mean, money was flowing, at least what we thought when money was flowing from that standpoint. We're going to make sure that we communicate more with black and brown businesses, and we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And everything went dark. And so, you know, tomorrow we'll have Robert Smith here, and he's been holding folks accountable. Clearly, that's not the case for Target because Ms. Kiera has shared all these great things that she's been able to do on this 17, 18-year journey, because the reason why you talk about that is you have to be committed to the work. And being committed to the work is not being on this fad of equity, this trend. It's popular to talk about, it's popular to do, but if you look at the data, which the data just tells the truth. And if you're not able to show the data and the information on it, you're not doing it. And so I guess really twofold from Jamez as well as Kiera is help us, one, how do we, from the business standpoint, Kiera, how do we hold businesses accountable? How do you continue, you've been on a 17-year journey, how do you settle policy within Target that is not unraveled? And then for Jamez, what do mayors need to be doing and working as we're talking to CEOs, as John Lewis would say, create some good trouble. What do we need to be doing to ensure that this policy is settled and we're advocating for it at the same time? You want to kick us off, Jamez?
Sure. So I'll give you a little bit of background on my story. I come from, like I said, North Minneapolis, and North Minneapolis is one of the most economically challenged communities in Minnesota. And so through that process of growing up, I always wanted to figure out a way to help my people, but at the same time do good by myself too. And so through that, the clean energy, back when Van Jones was kind of popping, right? He was a big deal. He talked about addressing the issue of climate change and poverty. And for me, I thought that was so amazing, right? Climate change was kind of coming up. It was bubbling to the surface around that time. And the issue of poverty was where I was kind of living, right? So it was kind of like, how do I get involved with this? And so fast forward 6, 7 years later, volunteering installing solar panels in the Virgin Islands, right, where I live, because that's where I finished off my degree, because I'm a non-traditional student for various reasons. And so what happened was when I came back, the state had required 1.5% of the energy come from solar power. And so that, to me, was a market signal that this industry is getting ready to take off, right? And so when you pay attention to those market signals as a business person, you got to seize the moment. And so I started my company specifically with the focus, making sure that people from my community will actively participate in this industry. Now, that's a lot different than what it looked like back then versus what it looks like now, right? Because it was still very much so early and maturing. And that was an extreme challenge for me because I wanted to make sure that my people had access. And so I went to the unions, I went to the public schools, because Minnesota, for all of you that don't know, Minnesota has some of the worst disparities in the country, right, when you aggregate them. And like 49 or 50 out of 50, 49, depending on how you place it. And so education, income, skills gap, jobs, all of that. And so I said, where's the training at for this industry when I started the company? And the training was 2 hours away by transit if you didn't have a car. That's a problem. Right? That's a real problem. And so when you ask where's the training for the unions, it's another 35 miles the other way. And we didn't have Uber back then like we do now, right? And even so, it's still a $75, $80 ride one way. And so for me, I looked at it and said, we need training in our community. We need to bring these training opportunities to make sure that we can be a part of these emerging sectors. There's a bunch of jobs out there already. And what I realized is that the people in my community, not even my community, in my state, were more worried about us taking their jobs, right? The predominant population were worried about us taking their jobs. So I said, okay, let's work together to create this pathway. And so by way of that, what ends up happening is there was a piece of property that the state owned, and I said, hey, look, let's make sure that we have access to these training programs right here in our community. And through that, by the grace of God, because I didn't know how it happened, I ended up having to be, well, I know how it happened, but I bought a $1.5 million building, okay? A 22,000 square foot facility specifically for the purpose.
Praise God.
Yeah, absolutely.
You gonna help me buy one?
I help you too. Don't worry about it, Pastor.
we got some buildings in Little Rock that need to be bought, so.
Well, we're going to figure it out.
Let's make sure, okay.
All right. Let's get some training down here.
You have not because you asked not, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
You got it. That is written on my mirror.
You see all these mayors like, we got some vacant buildings need to be bought. So
Absolutely. Let's
you can't be telling everybody what you're doing. People start asking. No, I'm just
Well, as a mayor, you can actually activate those buildings, right?
Do they need a solar panel on top
Amen.
of them?
Yes,
'Cause
we do.
He's got them in spades.
Right, absolutely. And so besides that, right, in the neighborhood, I focused on bringing that training to the neighborhood so that our people could actively participate in these sectors. So when we talk about sustainability, we talk about climate change, what are those industries? What do they look like, right? And so you think about, everybody immediately defers to solar, which is an industry, massive growth, right? But then there's battery storage, which is also a big deal. Then there's electric vehicle infrastructure. There's stormwater management, right? Then there's heat pumps. All of these things are in the Inflation Reduction Act, right? All these funding sources are in that IRA. And we need to make sure that our young people, as well as our underserved populations, are actively understanding that this is a pathway. Because we talked about, before this other panel, was about food insecurity. Well, the best way to address food insecurity is to be able to have a job, right? Right. And you got to be ready for the job. Because in Minnesota, we got more jobs than we have people. Well, there's a mismatch of skills, right? So let's make sure that we're bringing these skills to the people, opposed to trying to say, this is the way that this has always worked, and this is the way you're going to have to get to it because this is how this works. And it doesn't work that way. So so that's what's happening from my perspective.
This is why this conversation about skills is important, because Jemez just said something that I think needs to be reinforced. These industries have more jobs than they have people. And so this fear that this industry is going to eliminate the job that I'm in is a fallacy, because we have a skill deficit across this country in this particular industry. And so there is not an AI component that's going to come in and wipe out manufacturing. This is the new revolution. It really is. And so I think if we can continue to educate our students and our communities on what's possible in this sector, everyone is starting. This is one of the places that everyone will be starting from the same knowledge base. That doesn't happen very often. So the competitive nature by which you're not operating from 50 yards or 200 yards behind, you're starting at the same start line, is the workforce opportunity in this space that we have an opportunity, the mayors in the room have an opportunity to seize for your Black communities, because it's there.
I think I'm sorry, Jamesh.
Oh, I just want to piggyback on that, because what's happening right now is the moment is now. The Kairos moment is now, right? The federal funding is there. I don't know what your requirements are as far as your goals around clean energy, but if you put one on, right, 100% renewable energy, because that's how I got it and that's how I focus. I align my business with policy. There's a 100% renewable energy goal at the city of Minneapolis. Okay, I said, well, how are we gonna make sure we do this with equity, since we got these issues around racial injustice, right? Okay, I wanna make sure our folks have access. Then there's the county, then there's the state. The state just passed its law. So think about it. If these goals are in place, why are we not putting goals on the projects, right? Put those local hire requirements, put those racial diversity goals on them, right? And what ultimately ends up happening is now you have these bigger companies that are gonna be flocking to your city, looking for opportunity, and you say, hey man, you gotta get Mookie over there off the corner and you gotta give him a job, right? You gotta get him skilled up, you gotta get him trained, and then you can use those buildings you were talking about earlier that you wanna sell me, right? To create a training center, right? Where Mookie can have access to it, right? And see, the image on the screen is the building that I acquired. It's a 22,000 square foot building that was originally built by an African-American man in 1979 as a roller skating rink. He ended up losing the building because of the shenanigans that the city played with him. My pastor's father built that building, okay? By the grace of God, as you would say, right? And I say, I was able to acquire that building. And that building has 174 kilowatts of solar on the roof. It has a heat pump system. It has electric vehicle charging stations. It has a stormwater management system, as I said earlier, and a battery storage. So, and it's on the highest use transit line in the state of Minnesota, which means that we can get to it, right? It's in the neighborhood. It's a half a block from my house. I still live in the neighborhood on purpose. I can move anywhere. It's also a half a block from the other image that you saw, North High School. That's a low-income community solar garden right there. The city of Minneapolis issued an RFP for a community solar garden of low income. That was a project that they put out and said, we will be an anchor subscriber to make sure that low income people have access. But guess what? It didn't come with no money, Mayor. So guess what? Who had to build it? I did. I used my own capital to build that project. And it's no money out of pocket up front. The city's a subscriber, the public schools benefit, in addition to the people of the neighborhood. They wanted to build it in Fridley, which is a neighboring suburb, which made no sense. I said, why can't we put it in the neighborhood that you want to service? In addition to that, then I fought with the school district to actually put it on. I'm sorry, so let me also say, North High School is where I graduated from, okay? So the objectives is that we have to be intentional about how we do business, right? Be it with Target, be it with the cities, we have to be intentional. And so what I'm telling all you mayors here today is make sure that you're utilizing this Kairos moment to activate the people in your neighborhood. The Inflation Reduction Act has so much money in it, so much money. They're going to give money to schools. They're going to give money to the cities. All around this infrastructure needs to be built. And we need to make sure that we're utilizing that to activate our people. As I say, my primary objective in my business, one, is to stay in business, but also to activate our people.
I tell you, Jamez, you're really speaking to the room, particularly for us mayors, when you talk about the common word is intentionality. And I think one of the things as we kind of harness the voice of Maynard Jackson and Coleman Young and Marion Barry, Tom Bradley, Harold Washington, many, many others, their cities have grown, one, to increase not only the black population, but black prosperity. In the same while, their entire cities have grown exponentially, economically, within the whole wealth, so everybody can have a piece of the pie.
Absolutely.
And when you say it from that standpoint, if you all read Forbes magazine, Melody Hobson was recently featured. I can't remember if they were talking about Melody or talking about I can't pronounce her name right now, but TIA Crep CEO, T, as I know they affectionately call her. It was either talking about T or either talking about Melody, but the point of the matter is for us mayors, true leadership is making a change. And if we sit in these offices and appreciate the applause and don't change a damn thing, there's no reason for us to be there.
Come on.
We have to be intentional, creating joint ventures, telling folks, hey, you got to do business with everybody, and figuring out how you change, because what you're doing is you're creating what we call a jobs ministry, because folks are providing jobs, but helping other families, and it truly creates this effect on everyone. And so that's our role, to hold folks accountable, to advocate, to agitate. Literally, that's our job. And figuring out from a policy standpoint and leveraging, as Kiera shared earlier, information, because when you look at the information, we all have areas in our city you just draw a box around. That's where the crime is. That's where the food insecurity is. That's where most of the homelessness is. And there are ways a JOB prevents crime. A JOB prevents food insecurity. A JOB prevents all these different things, but we have to ensure that everyone is being equitable in that process and in an inclusive growth. And so I just want to say to Jamez, you're sharing things that for these mayors, for all of us to take back. One, we all are doing some fashion of that, but understand that don't be afraid to keep doing it, even if it means you get put out of office. You know why? That's why we were put there.
That's right.
To be a voice for the voiceless. And so from that note, Kiera, I want you to get him back to Target, because Target clearly is a leader on this front, and you all have been doing this for years, decades, and most folks aren't doing it. What are the, and just as we level set, because I don't know if we're supposed to show a video and we're supposed to get there.
We'll do that at the end.
Okay. What are the keys to success? And briefly, what's the why for Target?
Well, what I've just shared on the screen for the folks that can see it is our report card. And I'm an educator's kid, and so the difference between an A and an F is vast and wide. And I share that because anytime I didn't get an A, it was because my effort was not commensurate with the places that I did get an A. So on the diversity, equity, and inclusion team and across the enterprise, we call this our investment report card, because this is our accountability measure to help us understand where we've got to ebb and flow in those areas that I shared earlier around inclusiveness, inclusivity in communities and with the workforce, how we're building and connecting with our businesses through our assortment categories and working with entrepreneurs, and the societal impact that we are very intentional about having. And it comes back to a strategy, it comes back to setting goals for ourselves, annualizing those goals. What you see on the screen, we set them every 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And we optimize this activation through an ecosystem. We call it the target ecosystem. And that's demonstrated. I'm the 5th diversity officer at Target. I'm not the first, I'm not the second, I'm not the third, I'm not the 4th. I'm number 5. And
Hey, y'all, that's a big deal.
it's a very big deal.
Let's give Target a round of applause.
And what that means is I get to sit up here and share this really incredible body of work because 4 other Black women before me did not stop the grind. They gave me the baton a little bit further, so I didn't start from scratch. And so as Jemez is talking about the way that he had to really use his ingenuity to pull together a plan, where the private partnerships come into play is pair that plan with a really good strategy, really good intention, and make sure that you understand that the people that you're working with are going to continue to drive the work in synergy. And that's why we set 3-year goals. You know what I mean? Like, you got to annualize them. You got to see where you have place to move and grow. And it's the ecosystem. Earlier you said, well, how do you guys do that? It's because we make sure that everyone in our organization, our 400,000 plus team members, understand that they have an individual responsibility to be equitable in the workplace, to be inclusive in the workplace, and we're very clear that our workforce is going to reflect the community. So establishing that and integrating it into all of the work is how we can produce these outcomes. But we get pushed too. If everybody is telling you how great you are, you have a blind spot somewhere. And so I know that Jemez has a really good story and some examples to share as well. Like, on his journey to get to us, it wasn't smooth sailing, right? There were, tough conversations. There were differences of opinion. But in the room that we were in earlier this morning and what you just shared, Mayor, like, sometimes you're going to have to compromise, get to commitment, and go. And that means that he's not going to get 100% of what he wants. I'm not going to get 100% of what I want, but we're actually not the center of the conversation. The center of the conversation is what's going to be good for the residents of North Minneapolis, what's going to be best for the school, the kids in North High School that are facing those inequities in just about every facet of their life. And they're just looking for a glimmer of hope. And that hope might be learning about what is a job today that 20 years from now is a career that they never imagined for themselves. So we're in the business of making dreams come to life. That's really what we're doing. And so you got to have a dreamer, right? And you got to have a financier. And I think that it's just being that practical. How do we pair the dreams, make sure that we have an infrastructure, which we do as a $100 billion plus company. We have an infrastructure that can take this dream and grit and help bring it to life. And so that's really our heart, the people in the front row that are here with Target today. That's what they're doing every single day, not figuring out what the no is, but trying to help us get to the yes.
That's not only beautiful, it's impactful. And again, I say this knowing that there aren't many companies like Target that are doing this. The fact that I'm surprised when you say you're the 5th chief diversity officer. 5th. And there's so many folks who are on their first. And so, or none at all. And so for those in the room who are representing companies, please take time to research the journey, because it is a journey that you have to commit to, that Target has been doing for quite some time. Before we go to a couple of the videos, I want to hear from Jamez and just get any comments.
When you empower, when Target partnered with us to do this project, right, what it ultimately did is it created a level of security for the people who work with me, right? And me being able to give those jobs to those people allow me to do more of what I want to do, which is community building, okay? And so, because that's really my interest, right? I want to help fix the issue around education, jobs, skills, the racial disparities. And if I would have been smart, I would have transitioned this rendering that you see to what it is now. But none of these buildings are there. The furthest one to your left is the only one that's really there. None of these buildings are there. But we have acquired various pieces of property in this journey, and we are going to build what you see. And that's an expansion of that training center. That first one to the left, we're going to expand to 120,000 square feet across the street, vertically integrated over 5 stories, so that the students of the region, not just the Minneapolis Public Schools, students of the region can have access to this training. And there's a liquor store on that corner on the next one, but we're going to figure out how to get them up out of there. Okay? You know how it goes, corner liquor store in the neighborhood, right? But then we're looking at retail on the main level of that, on that next block. And we're looking at going with affordable and market rate housing vertically integrated there. On the adjacent, the last building that you see, we're looking at expanding a child care facility that is currently there, that I graduated from when I was 5. And we're going to expand that, go up with senior housing, so my grandmother, who's 86 years old, will have a place to live when she wants to sell her house, right? And so when you think about the properties that you all own as a city, when you think about the opportunities that you have as a city to empower the local people who want to do something, partnering with Target, partnering with the people who you all have the influence over, right? Kind of like how you said, if you end up out of office, it was supposed to be, but you push somebody to do something that they normally wouldn't have done. This is such a unique opportunity that we have right here, not just with the energy industry, but also all this, everything's changing. Everything is changing. And I'm appreciative of Target for the opportunity to work with you all to do so. So thank you.
Yeah, I just, it's a wonderful appreciation, but it came by way of work. Yeah. So I think for anyone in the room that is inspired by Jamez's story, it's important to know that it's a story 2 decades in the making. And so, don't be discouraged, don't be deterred. A no is just, jump off to a yes. And for those that are in the space that are either in the same industry that I and my colleagues are in, or for the mayors that are looking to broker those relationships, it's really, really important that you align yourselves to organizations and industries that aren't going to walk away in 6 months. And Mayor, you talked about, where have the places gone? Where have the commitments gone? That's why it's really, really important to, really understand, ask the questions. Go read their workforce diversity report and see who you're getting into business with. Go read the proxy. That's the #1 thing I tell anyone that starts working. My grandfather told me, go read your company report before you start working there. Go read, research, understand who is it that you're trying to broker and build relationships with. And based on those things that you learn, you should anticipate what an intentional and integrated relationship would look like or what it won't. So I think that Jamez is one of many, many stories that we are just thrilled and privileged to continue to accelerate and amplify and, again, bring dreams together. But we have to do that. We have that internally as well. So we got to be good inside before we can be good outside.
That's strong. I think what we've all seen today, and I believe Kira's going to show us this video pretty shortly, is one thing to walk away is to imprint equity and inclusion at the forefront of our minds, but not just our minds, imprint it in policy, imprint it in executing the policy, imprint it into our individual workforces, imprint it in our partnerships so we move forward. And the only way we move forward if we're actually doing something. And so again, as Kira shared, you know, we got to move from the dreaming stage to the doing stage. And you're able to do that by looking at the proxies of the right companies who have the capital to take the dreamers to where the dreamers want to go. And we create this ecosystem of equity to continue to move forward, to replicate itself as we move forward. And so I just think this is just something that's profound that Target has been sharing with us, and to see the story and the journey. And like you said, Kiera, you've been on this journey for 17, 18 years. Jamez has been on this journey. Stuff just doesn't happen overnight. Every now and then it does. But it takes a lot of preparation to truly see, you know, potential realized. And so I think many times we forget that marrying of the preparation and the purpose. And it comes through that work ethic that we've seen from Jamez, but also what we've seen from Target over these decades.
Let's cue this video. You were going to say something.
I just want to say to the mayors, please use this Inflation Reduction Act as a way to make it happen for your community. This is the most important thing that's said today. Anything else was said, Target, me, Mayor Scott, use this as an opportunity, please, because the schools, your constituents' children, the whole industry's shifting, and there's so much opportunity in it. Trillions of dollars are going to this thing. Get your green bank set up, okay? Because the green bank is where that money from the Environmental Protection Agency, $27 billion they're going to put out. $27 billion. That's a lot. Even if each state only got, it's $500 million, more than $500 million if each state got its fair share, right? So please take this opportunity, get involved, learn about the IRA and the other funding sources that are coming on the pipeline, and make sure that our people benefit from this. That's all.
As I'm getting ready to cue this video, tech team, you guys tell me, am I starting? Am I hitting a button? I'm good?
We are never done. Never done seeing, never done building, never done listening to that little voice inside your head that says there is always something more to do, and we are always better when we do it. Nah, we're never done. In fact, right now, we do more. We do the work of opening eyes wider to see difference as strength, opening paths forward to lift diverse talent, and of doing the essential work of not just cracking a door, but breaking down a wall to let all humanity in. We mean the kind of humanity that's made up of all humans. Because when we let more voices in, we lift each other up, creating a place where all people are not just asked to the table, they're heard at the table. Let's do all of that and more to realize the power of community and redefine what our job really is. A purpose shared, a promise kept, and a true reflection of the people that we love to serve every single day. Ready? Let's go.
I don't know other way to end off of that. Thank you, everyone. Again, take time to spend time with the Target team. They have a playbook to share that needs to be replicated across this nation. Have a great day.